See if this analogy works for you. I feel like the Cowboys are going over the rumble strips on the highway, like on the road. Those little strips that tell you when you're veering too far out of the lane. They're meant to like shake you back to attention and get you back onto the highway. The tires are going over the rumble strips. Now, can the Cowboys course correct and get back onto the highway, or is this thing moving more toward the ditch?
Scott Kincaid just got in the shallow cross. He feels Woolen over there and adjusts the route. Easy for Allen to find it. A good whole part of that play was the protection that Allen had. His subtle movements in the pocket to buy some time, and a lot of self-inflicted wounds there by the Seahawks to give up a touchdown there.
With Tom Brady and Kevin Burkhardt on the call, Buffalo's 31-10 win in Seattle was just about the only thing in Week 8 that did go according to script. Hi there. Welcome into the NFL on Fox podcast, presented by Verizon, the NFL powered by Verizon 5G. I am your host, Dave Helman, and we will get to a very impressive Bills win against the Seahawks later on, but holy cow, what a Sunday in the NFL in Week 8. These are the days that make you fall in love with the sport all over again. Just an incredible amount of heart-stopping finishes, a real deal. One of the most amazing Hail Marys I've ever seen. Jayden Daniels stealing victory from the Chicago Bears in front of absolute pandemonium scenes at FedEx Field. And that was after, by all definitions, the craziest early window that I can remember in quite some time. So much to get to on our Week 8 recap. All of that exciting stuff from Sunday. A fun Sunday night game between the Cowboys and 49ers. A fun game broke out after what had looked like a very routine game. You never know. You never know when the excitement's going to come into play in the NFL. That's going to be the theme of the episode as a spoiler. So, with all of that said, let's jump right into it. Let's get to our Sunday 6, the 6 biggest storylines we think you need to know coming out of Week 8. I don't think there's anywhere else we could have started the Sunday 6 this week than just the sheer amount of insanity we saw in Week 8. And I'll be honest, you look at the slate before the weekend, it looked a little sleepy after some of the big-time matchups we had in Week 7. That probably should have been a warning sign that the exact opposite was going to happen. What a frantic Sunday. Had an early window full of close finishes. Then the late window, late on Sunday afternoon, has a Hail Mary finish between the Bears and the Commanders. We'll get to that. But weeks from now, when I'm thinking back on Week 8, or when I'm reviewing this season months from now, I'm going to think about this Week 8 witching hour, because I think it's about as good as I've ever seen. Guessing you're familiar with that term. If you're not, Scott Hansen's NFL Red Zone catchphrase, the witching hour, is the final hour of the early window of games. So the fourth quarter of the early games. Typically you see 2 or 3 games coming down to the finish at the same time. It's very exciting. Sunday might have set the standard because we had 6 of them. It was a day that quad boxes and octo boxes were invented for, where it really felt like every 15 seconds, a game-changing play was happening, momentum was swinging, turnovers, touchdowns, last gasp field goals, had a couple of those. 6 games decided by an average of 3 points, several of those won on the final play of the game. Let's start with one of the biggest games of the weekend. We had it right here on Fox. Our guys, Greg Olsen and Adam Amin. Entertainment seems to follow them wherever they go. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons played another great one after that Thursday night classic. The Falcons beat the Bucs 31-26. A game, they call it the witching hour for a reason. A game that felt like it was in hand. Tampa Bay was up by multiple touchdowns late in this game. Then things got a little bit dicey. Next thing you know, Baker Mayfield is throwing into the end zone with a chance to win an improbable one after a Younghoe Koo missed field goal by Atlanta. Just a ton of fun down in Tampa. I had a chance to catch up with Greg and Adam about it. Well, guys, a perfect example to be ready for anything in division play, because even in such a back and forth game, it felt like this game had 2 or 3 endings there in the fourth quarter before the Falcons finally held the Buccaneers off on that final play.
Yeah, wild sequences at the end, the safety at one point, the touchdown that Tampa Bay responded with. Kirk Cousins, of all people, using his legs to pick up some key yardage at the end of the game, and then the stand at the end. I mean, this is the type of game that we saw the first time 3 weeks ago in Atlanta, and we had another similar game today.
Yeah, all these guys do is play thrillers. And I'll tell you what, a lot of talk coming in about what Tampa's offense was going to look like, minus those 2 key playmakers. I thought they did a pretty good job. The turnovers continue to be an issue. But, man, I'm really impressed with Kirk Cousins. The defense made stops, takeaways when they had to. This Falcons team seems like with each week, they're getting better, showing glimpses of what Raheem Morris thinks they can be. Now it's just the consistency. Can they do this week in, week out? We'll see them do it again next week when they go play Dallas Cowboys.
I heard y'all joking about it, and I mean, it was funny to see Kirk make 2 big plays with his legs there at the end of the game. But, you know, for a guy, we talked about it, getting him off of his spot, pressuring him as a way to beat him. It seems like very encouraging for the Falcons that he can make plays like that and pull something out of nothing, aside from what we know he can do in the pocket.
I think it has a lot to do with comfort. I mean, go back to his Minnesota days. They would start every game with like a bootleg in a play action, and he would be on the move. I'm not saying he's the best athlete, but they moved him out of the pocket in Minnesota. It's been a process, a constantly evolving process for Zach Robinson and Kirk Cousins to figure out what he's comfortable with and what they're good at together.
Yeah, I don't know how much you have to move him out of the pocket outside of when it's second and real long and you're trying to overcome a penalty that he scrambles to make it third and short. But he is so good from the pocket. 4 touchdowns, clean sheet, no picks. He was as efficient, as good as we've seen him. His best 2 games have come against this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. The question is, can we see more of this Atlanta offense when they play outside their division that we do when they play inside the division?
Really fun one, and it's the Falcons that are in the driver's seat in the NFC South. Guys, I appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Dave.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Dave.
That's just the beginning, though, because this truly felt like work to keep up with the amount of things that were happening. As Tampa Bay Atlanta was wrapping up, Green Bay was kicking another walk-off field goal with Brandon McManus to beat Jacksonville, game that felt like they controlled most of the way. The Jags rally back due to an injury to Jordan Love, but Malik Willis leads that walk-off drive. While that is happening, the Arizona Cardinals get a walk-off field goal for a 2nd consecutive week to beat the Miami Dolphins. We're going to talk about both of those games in more detail later. We're going to touch on the NFC North and the AFC East, so we'll touch on that. But still not done, because while all that's going on, we had the Baltimore Ravens, who are up to this point arguably the hottest team in the NFL. They fall to the Cleveland Browns, who got off the schneid with their first win since week 2. Also, their first game scoring more than 20 points all season long comes in their first week since Deshaun Watson's injury. They down Baltimore 29-24 in a wacky one. And of course it's a wacky one because the Ravens don't lose normal games. I joked last week, they either look like Thanos and just roll over the team that they're playing, or this type of stuff happens. A sloppy day from Baltimore, several missed opportunities. Rashad Bateman dropped a 50-yard gain on 3rd down midway through the 4th quarter that could have put the Ravens in position to pull away. And even with all of that said, Lamar Jackson leads them down to take a 24-23 lead late in the game. And with a minute left, if Kyle Hamilton can hang on to an errant throw from Jameis Winston, they get the interception. They get out of here with a uncomfortable, but a win nonetheless, 24-23 over Cleveland. Hamilton can't make the play, and literally one snap later, Jameis Winston finds Cedric Tillman for the go-ahead touchdown in the final minute of regulation. Lamar Jackson would try to pull off a Hail Mary, did not ultimately happen. What a game, though. 2 of the Ravens' 3 losses have come in games where they were favored by more than a touchdown. It just seems like that's the story for these guys. Missed opportunities. I'm not going to say didn't take the opposition seriously enough, but you think about where this team could be. Already an incredibly good team. Lamar Jackson's still in the thick of the MVP hunt. Derrick Henry had another productive day. But this could be a one-loss team with slightly better execution against overmatched opponents. Jameis Winston went over 300 yards for the Browns, gets them off of that losing streak. Joe Flacco and Jameis Winston, both in 6 of 7 opportunities, have gone over 300 yards for the Cleveland Browns. That's not something Deshaun Watson was able to do in 19 starts. Pittsburgh Steelers on top of the AFC North heading into their Monday Night Football game, just like everybody predicted. Still not done, by the way. While all of this was going on, I had to check back in on this later, to be blunt with you. It's too much to watch all at once, especially while we're trying to put a show together. The Houston Texans hang on to beat the Colts 23-20. Houston sweeps Indianapolis for the first time since 2016. But what a weird journey to get there. Houston, and that's, with all this stuff going on, you're looking at things and you're saying, okay, I can probably afford to take my eye off of Colts Texans, because the Texans have been leading this game for 10 points for most of the second half. They're driving deep into the red zone. They're either going to go up 10 inside the final minutes or just ice the game. Then all of a sudden, C.J. Stroud and Joe Mixon botch a routine toss play, and it's recovered by Dio Dangbo. He returns that 70-plus yards for a go-ahead Colts touchdown. But wait, that's ruled down by contact. So the Colts now are driving to try a Hail Mary of their own. Anthony Richardson can't pull it off. He's sacked on the final play of the game, which feels like a theme. Just a weird game for what has been a weird season for Anthony Richardson. 10 of 32 on the day, sacked 5 times, including on what could have potentially been a game-winning Hail Mary throw. And on one of those, he scrambles 20 yards, give or take, to avoid the Houston pass rush. And then in a close game, subs himself out, which led to speculation. Maybe he's hurt. Did he get, the wind knocked out of him on this play? Did somebody catch him wrong? What happened? After the game, Richardson talked about it, and he gives this answer as to why he missed playing time.
Man, tired. I ain't gonna lie. That was a lot of running right there that I did, and I don't think I was gonna be able to go that next play. So I just, just told Sam I just needed a break right there.
45 rushing yards and was running for his life against the Houston pass rush for a lot of the day. I get it. Still, the first time I've ever heard that, where an otherwise healthy NFL quarterback subbed himself out for a crucial third down because he was winded. I'm guessing that is going to be a talk show flashpoint for much of the next few days. But the Colts fall to the Texans. Texans dealt an injury to Stephon Diggs in this game. We'll have to keep an eye on that. That could be a big blow to an offense that's already dealing with injuries. But Houston on top of the AFC South rather comfortably, despite not playing all that well. Whew, okay. Covered all of that. I said we're going to get to Green Bay and Arizona at a later time. We will still talk about those games. Did I miss anybody? Oh, yeah, I did. We'll talk about the New York Jets as well, absolutely blowing it against the New England Patriots, who had lost 6 straight games. The Pats pull ahead of the Jets in the final minute of regulation in Foxborough. We will touch on that later in the show. Okay, that covers the early window. And then, like I said, Lamar Jackson's Hail Mary might have fallen incomplete. Maybe you saw it. Jayden Daniels' did not. In what had been a mostly disappointing Bears-Commanders game, Jayden Daniels buys himself 12 seconds of time on the last play of regulation, trailing the Bears by a score of 15-12, uncorks a 52-yard prayer. Straight out of college football, really. It gets tipped into the air, and Noah Brown, I hate to take away from the catch, but maybe the easiest Hail Mary catch I've ever seen, just because everybody fell to the ground fighting for the football, and he was just standing there in the end zone left to catch the bounce. And the Washington Commanders get a walk-off Hail Mary win on the last play of the late window. They are 6-2. Jayden Daniels fought through a rib injury in this game. He finishes with 378 total yards of offense, including the game-winning touchdown, Washington's only touchdown. Kevin Durant, if you're watching, what a tweet from KD, a loyal Washington football team fan all of these years. You gotta, I'm sorry, even if you're an NFC East rival fan, some part of you's gotta feel good for the people that have stuck with the Washington Commanders all this time through bad ownership, bad teams, really just a few bright spots since that 1991 season when they won their last Super Bowl. It has been worse than bad for a long, long time. They are on top of the NFC East, looking good while they do it. Robert Griffin III giving Jayden Daniels his props. RG3 was the last time anybody felt this good about the Washington football team. Just such a fun story. I don't know. Sure, maybe you thought the Commanders would be pretty good. Of course, Jayden Daniels is a really talented guy. I don't know how many people thought they would both be good, leading the division, and also just this incredibly fun team. They fight for each other. They scrap. Certainly seems like Dan Quinn's culture from Atlanta and from his time as the Cowboys D coordinator has followed him to the district. Such an exciting team and one of the most exciting finishes I can remember, which robbed a fairly interesting storyline for the Chicago Bears as well, because the Bears, despite not playing all that well and despite trailing for this entire game, Roschon Johnson put them ahead with less than 30 seconds to play. It looked for all the world like Caleb Williams was going to sneak back into his hometown and sneak out with maybe a less than deserving win, but a win all the same. Not so fast, my friend. What a moment at FedEx Field. Like I said, you got to feel good for the people that have been waiting 30 plus years for a team and a buzz like this around Washington football. And that's the gist. There's so much more to get to. We'll get deeper into some of these other games and some of these performances around the NFC North, the AFC East. Also there were plenty of other action that wasn't quite this frenetic, but I just don't know how many Sundays we've ever had like this where 7 different games literally came down to the wire. That's why you watch, and that's why you don't judge the schedule ahead of time, because this one was a banger. The next item on the Sunday 6 was not a frantic finish, but definitely one of the most impressive performances of Week 8. And it honestly looked like we were heading for an interesting finish as the Buffalo Bills and Seattle Seahawks slogged their way through a rainy game. Weird plays in the first half of this game. Josh Allen threw his first interception of the season. We talked so much about that. 301 passes before the Seahawks finally got the better of him. Seahawks had some weird plays. They get down to the goal line twice. Couple of mistakes leads to a field goal, and they actually get a turnover on downs. It looked like we were heading for a strange and maybe memorable finish, and then the Buffalo Bills just kind of put their foot on the throttle and pulled away. After halftime, up 14-3, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills go field goal, touchdown, methodical, crisp, clean, even in the bad conditions. They're up 31-3. Josh Allen spends the last minutes of this game on the sideline, yucking it up. Very happy to be on top of the division at 6-2. It's small wonder that with Tom Brady looking on, Josh Allen, with his 2 touchdowns, 283 passing yards, was the LFG player of this game.
Every game that I broadcast, I award the LFG Player of the Game to that one player who makes me say, let's go.
Hey guys, I'm here with Josh Allen, my LFG Player of the Game. Great performance, going on the road, tough environment. Tell me how it felt. Seattle, your first time here at Lumen Field, all the crowd noise, playing in the rain. Tell me about what it felt like for you today running out.
It felt great. I'll tell you what feels great right now is Bills Mafia. We are in the building. This was a fun one for them. It was a complimentary team win. Very happy for our guys. I ended up throwing one. That's kind of how it goes sometimes. But I will say this. I made a tackle, allowed our defense to go out there, and they made a stop for us. So I'm happy for our guys. Yeah,
so much complimentary football. Tell me about your relationship with Joe Brady as it continues to grow. And we talked a lot about over the course of the game about playing on time, playing within the structure of the defense, not relying on so many broken plays and putting yourself in a position where you feel like you're vulnerable to some hits. Does it feel any different for you out there? And how's your mindset as you kind of approach not a new style of play, but I would say, a smarter style to play.
Yeah, I think Joe's giving me a lot of answers on offense. I think the system that he's been putting in for us, it's been very awesome for us. Guys are getting open. We have the term everybody eats, and tonight it was Khalil and Dawson Knox got involved, and it just feels like guys are getting open. We're getting the ball to them, taking care of the football, and I think that mindset that Joe has in me, he trusts me implicitly, and I trust him as well. So anything that he calls, I'm just trying to go out there and run it to the best of our ability.
Yeah, you continue to just impress me, and you did from the day you got into the league. And you're just playing such great football. You're spreading around. You got a lot of great options. Amari didn't have a huge performance today. What are you seeing from him in practice in terms of him getting up to speed? I know he's going to be a big threat to this team as he grows into this offense.
I mean, he attracts a lot of attention. When he's singled up backside, it seems like he's always got someone over the top of him, which opens up other opportunities for our guys on the other side. So he's a true professional. I'm very fortunate to be able to play with someone like him. And as the weeks go by, we're going to continue to get on the same page, and he's going to get more involved as we go, and I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, you keep finding him, my man. Great seeing you. Awesome covering you today, and congratulations. You're off to a great start like always.
Thank you. Hey, you look good, man. You look really good.
You do too, baby.
I appreciate it.
You
Go
do
Bills.
too.
Thank you for the trophy.
Love you, man. Great seeing you.
We'll see you.
Bills were road favorites to win this game, so let's not get it twisted that it's some sort of upset. But this is still a frisky Seattle team that's right in the mix in its division, that's had some really impressive performances. And the Bills were going cross-country 3 time zones to play in a rowdy environment. To win is one thing. To really make this a laugher after halftime is a different matter completely. I was very impressed, even on a day where Josh Allen, he did have the turnover. He also had that strange fumble that he kicked while scrambling, just lost the ball in the rain. It was pouring at one point in this game. Even with those miscues, I thought he was so impressive. Spread the ball around to 6 different receivers. Didn't even need Amari Cooper to have a big day in his second game as a Bill. Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And the ground game. Bills ran for 160 yards. James Cook got going better than he has all season long. 111 on the day, 2 touchdowns. Like I said, they just were leaning on the Seahawks in the second half of this game. I don't think this game is going to lead to an avalanche of MVP talk for Josh Allen the way we did for Jared Goff and Lamar Jackson, at least not quite yet. Impressive team performance, but not the gaudiest stat line you've come to expect from a guy like Josh Allen. But just leave his name firmly on that short list. If it isn't taking off yet, I think it's going to. 2 touchdowns. Even with the 1 pick, he's up to 14 passing touchdowns, just 1 interception on the season. He's going to be there. And we know now at 6-2, the Bills are going to be in the playoff mix for the rest of the season. It's a conversation worth having. I'm putting that on your radar now so that when he does blow up for a 3, 4, or 5 touchdown game, you'll be ready to have that conversation. But honestly, even if that doesn't happen, just the way he is methodically stacking good, clean performances. A lot of people thought the Bills were going to take a step back this season. They are in a commanding position in their division. We'll touch on that later in the Sunday Six. We are going to talk about the AFC East landscape as a whole. But Josh Allen putting together a hell of a season. It's a big part of the reason why the Bills are where they are. But I do want to point out, Buffalo defense, for all the hand-wringing about guys they've lost, veterans, injuries, all that good stuff, they've held half of their opponents to less than 300 total yards. Maybe not the best unit in the league, but much, much better than a lot of people wanted to give them credit for. That Sean McDermott guy, I'm telling you, the guy knows a thing or two about coaching a defense. Third on the Sunday Six, like we said, let's talk about the big picture in the AFC East. This was a division we talked about in the preseason as one of the most daunting, one of the most competitive in the NFL. And while the Bills had a big day Sunday, the rest of this division, not quite as good of a day. And I don't want to speak too soon, but it's starting to feel like this division is slipping away for anybody that's not named the Buffalo Bills. And it starts in Miami, where the Arizona Cardinals turned a very obvious storyline on its head. Tua Tagovailoa returned to action after the head injury that he suffered all the way back in week 2. Dolphins scored 27 points. They looked like a much more viable team. That was the obvious storyline. Miami led for much of this game. And while it might not have been their best day, it seemed like they were very comfortably heading toward a big win right up until they weren't. I had a chance to catch up with the guys on the call, our friends Jason Benetti and Mark Schlereth, who were on hand to witness a very impressive comeback by the Arizona Cardinals. Well, guys, I'll be honest. I was coming into today planning to talk to y'all and ask you about Tua Tagovailoa's return to action. I am curious about that, but a heck of a performance from Kyler Murray and the Cardinals to steal this one in Miami.
How resilient has this Cardinal team been, Mark? I mean, you see what they did last week. They didn't put up a whole lot of points last week, but today they get into field goal range enough for good night Chad again.
Yeah, no question about that. You know, one of the things they talked about is creating some explosive plays in the passing game, and their passing game has it's just not clicked so far this year. And then we saw it over 100 yards from Marvin Harrison Jr., really getting those over routes, the deep over routes, the low crosses, and letting Kyler Murray kind of lead him and let him go catch the ball. And they really found something today in their passing game that I thought was exceptional.
It's probably cold comfort after a loss that, I mean, if it felt like the Dolphins had control of this late in the game, I'm sure that's going to bother them for a minute. But they do almost triple their point total for the season getting Tua back. It has to be encouraging to see this offense function the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, they'd have to get a win against Buffalo next time out. I mean, that would be huge. But you think about the way this game went, they put up a safety for the Cardinals, and you lose by 1.
Yeah, exactly. And I think ultimately you look at Tua coming back, you thought maybe there'd be some rust. I'm telling you what, when it comes to the passing game, there was zero rust. Yeah. Tua was on target, on time, giving his receivers opportunities to run after the catch, and their run game was really good. And you know, you just look at that one turnover, right? The one botched snap that went over his head that resulted in the safety, and that's the difference in the game. And that was the only part of this game for Tua's return that was a little bit shaky. He had a couple of balls on the ground off of snaps, and that's the difference in the game.
We'll see how the Dolphins can rebound on the road at Buffalo, like y'all mentioned. But, man, the 4-4 Arizona Cardinals, really fun story as we approach the halfway point of the season. Guys, I appreciate it.
Dave, thanks.
I'm not trying to exaggerate here, but I don't think you can understate how bad this loss was for Miami when you look at the big picture, because they win this game. Again, yeah, it's looked really bad, but that is all without your starting quarterback. You win this game, you improve to 3-4 on the season with a road trip to Buffalo coming up. You're right there in the mix, chance to split the season series with the Bills, get to 500, and now we play for the second half of the season and we see where the chips fall. That doesn't happen. You're sitting at 2-5. Now you go to Buffalo. Instead of making a play to throw your hat in the ring in the playoff mix, it feels like next week against the Bills is to keep the season alive. As you lose that game, the Bills improve to 7-2, Miami falls to 2-6, and the Dolphins are the closest team to Buffalo in the AFC East standings. I know we get carried away sometimes and we forget how long an NFL season is, but with the way Josh Allen is playing and just the Bills' overall performance for much of this season, Miami loses that game. I think you can put a bow on the division race. It's not to say the Bills will just run away and win the division by 6-7 games, but it's hard to imagine anybody catching them if the Bills beat Miami, thereby sweeping that series. So you can't even gain any ground in the tiebreakers. It's a tough day for the Dolphins. I don't want to take too much shine off the Cardinals, though. An equally big moment for them. They get up to 500. They are now one of the 3 teams tied for the NFC West lead. Talk about divisions we didn't see coming. That's a wacky one. And it all stems from the rejuvenated play of their guy, Kyler Murray, who caught up with Arjen Hale after the big win.
Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals spoiling Tua Tagovailoa's return here in Miami. Kyler, the Cardinals didn't lead all game, and then you pop up at the end and able to snatch victory. What was the key to this one?
Man, 60 minutes. The guys fought hard. Stayed down, man, head on the grind, and didn't lose focus. It was a lot of adversity that we faced, but kept fighting together all 3 phases, and we got it done.
You just told me it finally got fun at the end.
Yeah, no, I was telling you, there's no relaxation in a game like that. You got Tua, and a high-powered offense over there. So offensively, we just had to keep going, man. Keep going in defense. They got crucial stops for us, and we were able to put a 2 minute together and get it done.
You've been waiting for that Marvin Harrison Jr. connection to click all season. What was it today?
Yeah, we don't really worry about the outsiders. All the focus is inside the building. We understand who we are. We understand what we can accomplish together. It's just about getting together and continue to get better every week. Attacking every day about the process, and he did his thing today.
Enjoy the win. Thanks for your time, Kyler.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cardinals get their first consecutive wins since the tail end of the 2021 season. Yes, you heard that right. I do want to shout out one of the most beautiful examples of situational football we saw in Week 8, and that was the possession to go ahead by the Arizona Cardinals. Got the ball at their own 11 with 5 minutes to play. Did not give the ball back. Do you realize how hard that is to do? Typically, it's a 4-minute offense when you get the ball with 4 minutes to play on either side of a half. Executing a scoring drive while also not giving the other team the ball back is an incredibly difficult thing to do. Cardinals had a fantastic mix of run and pass. James Conner had his thing going. Kyler found Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. for shot plays. And then it comes down to Chad Ryland. Second consecutive week, they've asked him to hit a walk-off field goal, and he drills it. Love this stat. He is the first player in NFL history to hit game-winning field goals with no time remaining on the clock in back-to-back weeks in situations where a miss would have lost them the game. They're down last week to the Chargers, down this week to the Dolphins. It's one thing to miss a game-winning field goal and go to overtime. Ryland delivered in back-to-back weeks where he had to hit to win the game. First player to ever do that in back-to-back weeks. Incredible month for Chad Ryland. Cardinals signed him off their practice squad on October 15th because Matt Prater was suffered an injury. And in that time, they've won 3 games off of his leg. Field goal against the Niners with 1.5 minutes to play in his first game, and now back-to-back walk-offs for Chad Ryland. What a story there for the Arizona Cardinals. But I digress. We are not quite done with the AFC East. And that's part of the reason the vibes are so bad is the other team that was supposed to compete with the Bills to take away their reign over this division. It was the New York Jets. And it was right here on this show a week ago when I said, even with the loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 2-5, I didn't think the Jets were done. I saw a path to the playoffs if they could just gel a little bit, win the winnable games. And I said, forget I said any of this if they can't beat the New England Patriots. And lo and behold, while all that craziness was happening in the early window, the New England Patriots, who lost Drake May to a potential concussion, May took a shot while he was sliding on a scramble, did not return to the game. We'll see how he's doing as the week goes along. Jacoby Brissett comes back in, and they just out ugly the New York Jets. Ramondre Stevenson runs in from the yard out with 22 seconds left on the clock. I can't believe it. 'Cause like you look at it, there's not even a glaring reason why this had to happen where, the Jets had 4 turnovers. No, they had no turnovers. There were no turnovers in this game. Aaron Rodgers had a decent enough day, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, only sacked 1 time. They ran the ball fairly well. They just can't do it all in unison, in complementary fashion, the way the good football teams do. They stall out when they need to get something going. They leave it too late to put a touchdown drive together. Probably doesn't help that Greg Zuerlein had 2 brutal misses, an extra point, and a field goal in this game. But when you're losing to New England, snapping a 6-game losing streak for the Patriots, you can't just put it on your kicker. This is a game the Jets were heavily favored to win, game that they should have won, and they did not. And I'm here to say it now. I'm sure they'll win more games this season. Making the playoffs feels borderline impossible without one of the most incredible turnarounds we've ever seen in the NFL. And that goes back to my point from the beginning. I get that there's a lot of season left, But the nerds who do the probabilities will tell you right now, the Buffalo Bills have a 97% chance of making the playoffs. Neither the Dolphins nor the New York Jets even have a 10% chance. So you run the risk of making yourself look foolish when you decide division winners in October, but it feels that close for the Buffalo Bills. And a win at home against the Miami Dolphins next week, it won't lock it up officially, but from a vibe standpoint, this really feels like Buffalo's situation to lose. And I don't think very many people expected that. Maybe you didn't believe in the Jets. Maybe you didn't believe in the Dolphins. I don't know if anybody expected that none of them would offer up a serious challenge to the Bills. Fourth item on the Sunday Six is our Victory Unlocked. It is brought to you by Zillow Agents, Tours, Loans, Homes. I bet you the San Francisco 49ers are hoping that a bye week spent at home will help them unlock a higher level of play. They get the win Sunday night in a weird game, 30-24 over their old rivals, the Dallas Cowboys. 30-24, lot closer than it needed to be, and a lot closer than you would have guessed, even with like 12 minutes to play in this game. The end of the third quarter, it was 27-10. Cowboys coming off their bye week, a very spirited effort in the first half after a sloppy start. You know, you talk about teams getting in the lab, tweaking some things, coming out with a renewed sense of purpose. It felt like that is what happened with the Cowboys. Just ran out of gas roughly 2.5 quarters in. George Kittle gets himself going. The Niners commit to the running game in the second half. It's 27-10. It's a party. They're blowing out the Cowboys again, just like they did last year. What else is new? And then the masters of the fourth quarter rally be debating once again another opportunity to debate the definition of garbage time, because this is what the Dallas Cowboys do. They wait until it feels like garbage time, and then they just kick it into high gear. Fourth quarter, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb torched the 49ers defense. 2 70-yard scoring drives, zipped right down the field. The second one that cut it to a 6-point lead didn't even take a minute off the clock, and all of a sudden, the Niners might lose a game that they had been dominating. Very interesting. Like I said, Cowboys very good at kicking ass when it seems like things are out of reach. They force a 49er punt with time left in this game. Plenty of time on the clock for Dak Prescott to do his thing. 3:05 remaining when they get the ball. 4 plays, 0 yards gain, turnover on downs for the Cowboys. Dak almost threw a pick to Fred Warner. And then the brutal one, he looks for Kevontae Turpin down the sideline on a shot play. He's got him, drops a dime in perfectly for what would have been a huge gain that gives them a chance to go down and get the win, and it's dropped. Especially brutal because it looked like the same play they tried early in the game where Dak was hit on the throw and the shot to Turpin was intercepted because Dak just got lit up in the pocket. It would have felt so poetic if the Cowboys had connected on that play. Alas, they don't. The kings of the almost comeback, they fall by 6 points. Like I said, not comfy if you're the 49ers, but you finally get to take a week off in a season of just nonstop drama. Maybe you can get Christian McCaffrey back, get Deebo Samuel a little bit healthier. Dude's out there catching 4 balls for 71 yards after being hospitalized with pneumonia and could have had a better day. Holding flag called back, a huge long touchdown for Deebo. Yeah, just maybe rest up and hope you can be a better version of what we've seen. That said, they did commit to the bit, man. 36 carries for 223 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's Isaac Guerrero this time. I swear, the Niners are doing such a hilarious impression. Kyle Shanahan's dad's old teams in Denver, who just used to have a different star running back every year. Jordan Mason already doing a wonderful job filling in for Christian McCaffrey. He leaves with a shoulder injury. It's Isaac Guerrero who goes 14 carries for 85 yards and a touchdown. Could have had 2, but he slid down at the end of this game. He's done that twice this season, giving up a very likely touchdown to help the Niners run out the clock. Good for him. Unselfish dude. But man, I hope San Francisco can get a little bit healthier. It just looked off for them. Everything looked a little more difficult. Brock Purdy used his legs a lot in this game. Cowboys kept him in the pocket, forced him to do things with his legs by doing a fairly good job in coverage. And that's the interesting thing. Okay, credit to the 49ers at 4-4, sharing the division lead. Don't think anybody thought that the NFC West would be this competitive halfway through the season, or at the very least that the Niners would be this close to the rest of the pack. But they trot off into their bye week, hoping to get a little bit healthier and maybe a little bit less dramatic than they have been here in the first 8 weeks of the season. Let's flip this over to the other side, because I'm so curious about where things go with the Cowboys. Okay, you don't have to buy into the comeback narrative. They were down by 17 points. If you want to call that garbage time stats, by all means. It's still, across all 4 quarters, was a spirited effort from the Cowboys. I know this is going to sound silly because they did give up 223 rushing yards, but the flashes were there by the Dallas defense, getting key stops when they need to, getting off the field, forcing the Niners to settle for field goals early on in the game. And Dak and CeeDee Lamb did get on enough of the same page that maybe you feel like there's something to build on there. And right, they're a game below 500. Plenty of teams are in worse situations. But having said all that, the vibes with this Cowboys team just feel rough. Whether you want to talk about this offense that makes life incredibly hard on itself, the Dallas run game, once again, a complete non-factor, missed opportunities in the passing game outside of some fourth quarter heroics. Now you're seeing, after this one, which again, this a 6-point loss on the road coming out of the bye week. Mathematically, all of your goals are still there. But you've got Cowboys cornerback Trayvon Diggs barking at media members who critique his play in the locker room after this game. We already know, Jerry Jones has been at odds with the media here in recent weeks, threatening Dallas area radio hosts and just generally being a bit prickly, we'll say. The vibes around the Cowboys feel so much worse than 3-4. And I wonder how they respond to it, because guess what? It's not getting a lot easier than a banged up 49ers team. It's at Atlanta next week, home against the Eagles after that, Houston, at Washington. You don't get a game against a quote unquote manageable opponent until Thanksgiving. That's against the Giants. It sounds like a long month of football, and see if this analogy works for you. I feel like the Cowboys are going over the rumble strips on the highway, like on the road. Those little strips that tell you when you're veering too far out of the lane. They're meant to shake you back to attention and get you back onto the highway. The tires are going over the rumble strips. Now, can the Cowboys course correct and get back onto the highway, or is this thing moving more toward the ditch? I'm fascinated to see, because the mood and the aura of the 2024 Cowboys is so much worse than a 3-4 record suggests it should be. We're going to talk about this in a lot more detail. Don't worry. We can get deeper into what ails the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to have a guy who knows a thing or two about them. Keyshawn Johnson's going to join me on the show on Tuesday. We'll get into all things Cowboys, what might be fixed, what can't be fixed. We'll do a deep dive on all things Dallas. But I think all told, they gave a better accounting of themselves against San Francisco than I would have guessed. And it doesn't feel like that's going to help them at all. I have a very close eye on this situation, because it kind of feels like everything's hanging by a thread in Dallas right now. Fifth item on the Sunday Six. Let's take a closer look at that workhorse that is the NFC North, because they just keep things rolling. And on a day with so much insanity, let's give a shout out to the boring and the ho-hum. Not everything was a last-second thriller in Week 8, because you know who was not stressing? the Detroit Lions and all of their fans tuned in for a 52-14 beatdown of the Tennessee Titans. It's a game that felt comfortably over before halftime, and even if you're the nervous kind of Lions fan, you felt comfortable about this very early in the third quarter. 52-14 that's college football. That's when you sub in the freshman against directional university tech, not the NFL. The Lions were favored by 11, which felt like a crazy big line, even for a game between a contender and a struggling team like Tennessee. And needless to say, they cleared it with ease. And the funny thing is, they didn't even need to do that much. Detroit had 225 yards of offense. Jared Goff threw for just 85 yards. Because, again, much like college football, the Lions just kept getting the ball like in the red zone. They had 5 scoring drives that spanned 26 yards or less. Takeaways, interceptions, fumble recoveries, and then the return game went ballistic. They had a punt return touchdown as well as several long kick returns. Every time the offense needed to get on the field, they were already within shouting distance of the end zone. Don't need to get into like a crazy big breakdown of this game. It's always remarkable when you see something this lopsided in the NFL. They're 6-1. They stay on top of this very ridiculous division, which has now, through 8 weeks, only lost 6 games outside of its division. If you're watching, you see the standings. Lions have lost 1 game outside of their division. Packers have lost 1 game outside of the NFC North. Vikings, just 1 loss outside of the NFC North. Unfortunately, punctuated by that devastating Hail Mary loss, the Bears have lost 50% of the non-divisional games in the NFC North. We said it in the preview episode. It's brutal for the Chicago Bears to be in last place with a winning record, especially when they were so close to improving to 5-2. The Lions stay on top. Let's talk. We mentioned when we were talking about crazy finishes, the Packers were a part of that as well. But let's take a deeper look at that, because the Packers do beat Jacksonville 30-27. Another walk-off field goal. Brandon McManus has also hit 2 in a row, just like Chad Ryman of Arizona, although a miss here would have just sent the game to overtime. Still, Packers have to be happy about that midweek addition a couple weeks ago. What makes this interesting is that the Packers once again did it without Jordan Love, who exited with a groin injury early in the third quarter against Jacksonville. The early reports, we will check in with this on the Tuesday episode. We'll see how it all plays out over the course of Monday. But right now, it sounds like the Packers are optimistic that Jordan Love avoided a long-term injury. But in the moment, Green Bay once again had to turn to Malik Willis. And once again, Packers general manager Brian Gutekunst has got to be sitting up in the box at this game like Billy Madison. I'm dating myself with this reference. He says, man, I'm glad I called that guy. It's easy to forget, at least it was for me, Malik Willis joined this team like 10 days before the start of the regular season. Like, not a blockbuster trade at all. The very afterthought sort of trade that happens during roster cutdowns. 7th round pick to Tennessee. Like, okay, the Packers just wanted to improve their quarterback depth, have a developmental guy on the practice squad. Maybe he can play the role of Jayden Daniels or Caleb Williams on game week, and that'll be a win. Yeah, right, dude. Malik Willis, 2-0 as a starter already because of Jordan Love's knee injury at the start of the season, and he gets the Packers across the finish line on Sunday and did play well. The stat line's not going to blow you away, but he helped Green Bay get points on 3 of his 5 possessions, including an end-of-game situation where he needed to drive them the field, highlighted by 51-yard catch and run by Jayden Reed. I would call it beautiful design by Matt LaFleur. Just mwah. Chef's kiss play design. Jayden Reed basically getting lost in the Jaguars' coverage. But hey, Malik Willis still had to hit the throw. He got them down into the red zone, guided them into position for the walk-off field goal. Packers have gone 3-0 in games where Malik Willis needed to play a substantial role. And think about it, in this division of all divisions where everyone has a winning record, A 7th-round pick in late August is essentially the difference between 6-2 and 3-5. And if that wasn't cool enough, maybe he wouldn't say this into a microphone, but I wonder how Malik Willis feels seeing the Tennessee Titans struggle to find any semblance of quality quarterback play while he is keeping Green Bay's season alive is an understatement. I mean, he is one of the driving forces of the first half of this season for Green Bay. A really cool story for them as they improve to 6-2. Equally big part of this win was the play of Packers running back Josh Jacobs, who arguably had the best day of his young Packers career, 25 carries for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. He caught up with our Megan Allevi after the Packers' big win.
Josh, when we sat down earlier this week, you told me you always want to make an impact whenever you touch the ball. Impact you did today, 2 touchdowns. What was working for you?
Man, you know, I told myself yesterday that my goal coming into this game was to inspire the play caller, inspire the team. And, you know, if it came down to it, put the game on my back. So that's what I try to come out here and do.
You certainly did that, and your leadership is always apparent. When Jordan Love went down, you were one of those guys that was voicing, hey, let's go, let's do this. Coach said it was going to be a fight. Ultimately, how did you guys rally to win this one?
Man, you know, we did a lot of stuff today that we kind of hurt ourselves with, that we need to come out and clean up. But, man, we battled, man, and that's the thing about this team, man. We're very resilient. We just kept swinging, and it came out with a victory.
Also worth mentioning, Minnesota, we haven't had a show since Thursday Night Football. Not the end of the world that the Vikings lose to the LA Rams to fall to 5-2 at all, especially a Rams team that finally had healthy receivers. But the loss of Christian Darrisaw at left tackle, we'll see. We're not putting a pin in the Vikings, but that is a potentially division-altering injury, unfortunately, for the Vikings. We talked about the Hail Mary at the top of the show. Curious to see how the Chicago Bears handle the fallout of all of that, especially with the cell phone video coming out of cornerback Tyreek Stevenson chirping at fans and being focused more on winning, thinking at least that he had won the game as Jayden Daniels was scrambling. Bad look for Tyreek Stevenson. Saw he already issued an apology on social media, but that's a tough market to have a moment like that in. I'm going to be interested to see how the Bears weather this storm, because loss is no big deal, but that loss, especially a young team with so many young players, interested to see how they flush that one. But a very entertaining weekend in the NFC North. Sixth and final thing on our Sunday 6, something that you probably heard a few times during the course of your NFL Sunday, if I had to guess. And if you somehow missed it, I'll let my man Kevin Kugler, who called the Lions-Titans game, say it one more time for you.
In motion, toss play. Montgomery wants to throw to the end zone. There's the touchdown. He got his national tight end a touchdown, but he got it from a running back in David Montgomery.
Yes, Sam Laporta with one of many touchdowns caught by a tight end on what was apparently National Tight Ends Day, if you didn't hear. And yeah, a unique one for Laporta because it came from David Montgomery. A fun day for the Detroit Lions. But I mean, let's talk about this, because honestly, I wasn't going to include this on the rundown. These holidays are made up. This one was, in fact, started by 49ers tight end George Kittle a few years ago. It's arbitrary. And I wasn't sure it needed to be repeated on the show, except the tight ends actually balled out on National Tight Ends Day. I've never seen anything like it. Like, it's one thing to promote National Tight Ends Day on social media and in broadcasts all day, but when it's all said and done, 15 different tight ends scored a touchdown on Sunday. That's the highest number this season. And on top of that, we checked this at the end of the 49ers game. There were 177 receptions by tight ends just on Sunday. That is the most by the position in one day in NFL history. I mean, every tight end in the league went bonkers in week 8. We just heard about Sam Laporta, his 6 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts and Cade Otton honestly started it early on Sunday. Pitts had 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. Cade Otton went 9 for 81 and 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, that's 4 of the 15 touchdowns in one game right there. Tucker Kraft had another huge day, 78 yards and a tutty for Green Bay. David Njoku and Mark Andrews both had nice days in the Baltimore-Cleveland game. I think we talked about Trey McBride already, led all receivers for Arizona, led all receivers in that entire game. Maybe the best catch of the day, Adam Troutman, disgusting one-handed catch in that beatdown that Denver put on Carolina. Did I mention the most famous and most successful of them all, Travis Kelce, finally had a Travis Kelce type day. Felt like we've been waiting for the Chiefs tight end to break out all season. He goes 10 for 90 and a touchdown in Kansas City's 27-20 win against the Raiders. And then, very fittingly, to bring it all home, George Kittle, who started this whole thing, goes 6 for 128 and a touchdown against the Cowboys. Very interestingly, Kittle caught the touchdown on a play that was flagged by 2 refs for offensive pass interference. And the refs conferred and decided, no, there was no flag. There's no flag. It's National Tight Ends Day. Tight ends definitely had their moment, punctuated in a big way by George Kittle. Like I said, cool. It's fun to have the graphics and the tweets, and we can talk about it on the broadcasts. Look at the numbers, and it's honestly mind-boggling. Maybe there's something to this holiday after all, because on National Tight Ends Day, the tight ends absolutely showed out. That is a fitting way to wrap this thing up. Another fantastic Sunday in the books. Who knows what next week will bring? Before then, we got plenty more to get to, though. Week 8 not quite finished. We got Steelers Giants on Monday night. We'll have a recap of all of that on Tuesday. I already said it, but we'll be joined by Keyshawn Johnson on Tuesday as well. Talk about Week 8, take a closer look at the Dallas Cowboys, see where it goes, see where it takes us as we catch up with Keyshawn. We'll also have Jay Glazer on, catching up with all the latest updates and insights coming out of the weekend. So much more coming your way on Tuesday. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not, so we're in your feed. Go find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to get your podcasts. Follow us on social at NFL on Fox Pod. I think that just about wraps it up. A wild, fun Week 8. We will be back Tuesday. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Hope your football weekend was as fun as ours was. We'll chat with you real soon.